Hello, my name is Marcey Hamm, and I'm going to share with you in a digital format, chapter by chapter, my life. Now, my fans since 1986, when I started composing after I died in the car wreck in 85, my fans have been asking me all these years for me to do my story and let everybody know about my story, because it's a true story and it's a very unusual story. And my fans just love this story, and I guess they find it entertaining. I don't know. But you may as well just get your popcorn out and get you a drink and put your feet up, because this is going to be a wild ride. And I'm going to do it chapter by chapter. So this whole series, and I'll do these chapters till the day I leave this world. And I plan on living till about 2,000 or 3,000 years, so you may as well get a long drink there. But anyway, it's going to be called Marcey Hamm's Chronicles, and each chapter is a chapter in my life, and it's going to have a theme to that chapter. And then it'll be a digital download, and that'll be free for everybody on planet Earth. And if any aliens want it, that's okay, fine. And if your dog wants it, that's okay too, or your cat or whatever. What else? I think that's about it. It is a true story, and I'll recall it as best I can. I do have pretty good memory, but I don't know if I'll say the people's names yet. I'm still thinking about that. I don't know if I will, because I want to protect people's privacy, and I don't want the media just going after everybody and all that sort of stuff. So anyway, I probably will just make up the name, but I'll tell you that this is not that person's real name, but I'll let you know all these things, because I do respect people's privacy, and I just think it's important to let people have their life. So this particular chapter, chapter 1, is called Birth. And so here's the story. First of all, I was in this auditorium, and it looked like a megaphone type thing, and the mouthpiece of the megaphone was the stage. And as the megaphone goes outward, and the diameter gets larger and larger, and it's in a cylinder type format, that's where the auditorium was, where everybody was sitting. Now, this was a very special event, and I don't know what all it was about. I don't remember any of that. I just remember looking as far up as I could, and you couldn't see the end of this spiraling auditorium. And it was my turn to go across the stage. So I go across the stage, and this man's standing behind this podium, and he hands me this scroll. Now, this scroll wasn't like any normal scroll. It was a light. It was made out of light, and it emanated this energy, a white light. However, it looked like a papyrus type paper, but it was paper made out of this light. It was real interesting. And so when he handed it to me, it was probably about 4 or 5 inches in diameter. And I took the scroll and I put it underneath my left arm and just started walking down, off. Well, I went to the edge of the stage, and instead of going to a chair or a seat or whatever, I just went into this descent, like a falling. So the only way I can describe that to you is I was like, let's say you're at Six Flags or Disney World or whatever, and you're in a roller coaster, and you're at the top of the roller coaster, and you're getting ready to go down the hill now. That's what this was like. It was like, I just kind of started going down this hill in this descent. Now, here's what was interesting. First of all, I did not want to lose my memory. I was just in this fury. I did not want to lose my memory. And boy, these masks started coming in like they were shadows, and they were trying to shadow my memory and all this stuff. And I knew what was going on, because I was getting ready to incarnate. And I didn't want this thing to, whatever these masks, I just didn't want them to mask my memory. And so I was going in this descent, fighting all get out to keep my memory. So that's going on. And then the other thing that's going on is this scroll that I had. As I was descending, it was like I was going through all these different energy fields. And whenever I went through these energy fields, the scroll would absorb into my body and into my system. My take on it is that it was setting up my pattern, for this lifetime. Oh, I just thought this was so interesting. And but I was real busy. I couldn't put a lot of attention on that part, even though I was observing all that. But my real attention was my memory, because I really didn't want to lose any of that. Well, finally, I'm hovering over my future mother, and I was just like, okay. And the baby was now out of her womb, and it was time for me to enter into that baby. And I went, I'm not going in there, because I just really knew that if I go into that baby's body, I was going to lose my memory, or the chances were I would. And these two beings that were with me promised me that they'd help me keep my memory. Well, I just didn't trust that at all. And I'm not saying there's anything against them. I just didn't trust anything right now, because I just didn't want to lose my memory. And I sure didn't want to take the chance going in that baby's body and losing all what memory I did able to keep. Well, then my mother, she leaves her body, and she comes to me and she says, if you don't come now, I'm leaving. This is what she said to me. And I thought, oh, great. You know, I didn't want that karma, and I certainly didn't want to get in trouble with the big cheese in the sky. So I had to go. It was time for me not to deal with this anymore. So I went into the baby's body. And that was the end of that. What's interesting, though, I got to keep my memory. So my little buddies there, you know, promised me that they'd help me, and they did. And so I just love them dearly. People may not know this, but we're assigned people that are with us for each incarnation. And I think that is just so sweet. And so when kids see their little buddies, you know, they see their angels. You know, that's where I think angels came from in some of the religions, is these beings that are assigned to us. And they're there to be our help and help us. So I just think that's so sweet. But anyway, what's interesting is, and I just want to say this part, and then I'll be through with this part of the chapter, is years later, when I had my near-death experience in a car wreck in 1985. It was after that, when I had all my injuries, you know, I had to deal with all the rehab, and it's just a mess. But anyway, I had my Inward Harmony experience. This was in March of 1986. What happened was, I got to thinking, because I really like to observe life and look at life with a scientific perceptive of things. And I got to thinking about my mother, and I thought, you know, if I remember my birth, at least what I remembered of it, and that I'm telling you about, that's what I remember, I wondered if she remembered anything or whatever. And I just got really curious about this. So I packed my bags, and I went to Oklahoma, and I went to stay with my mom and dad. And Dad was out running errands, and Mother was in the den reading her newspaper. And Mom, to her, reading her newspaper, you just didn't bother her, you know, and you respected her space and everything. And so I sat down on the couch, and I said, Mama, I said, is it okay if I ask you a question? And she said, yes. And all this time she's really engulfed in her paper. And I said, was there anything unusual in my birth? And oh my gosh, you could have just, the room just went still. It was like time just froze. Just froze. She didn't move a muscle. And then, I don't know, it just seemed like all eternity. And then, you know, all of a sudden she takes the paper, and she nice and neatly just folds it up and puts it on the stand there next to her chair, and she just gets up from the den and walks out of the room, not saying a word to me, and she goes upstairs. And I'm sitting on the couch going, holy doo-doo-caca. And I thought, oh boy, I really hit something here. And I just sat there. I didn't know what to do. I was just sitting there. And a few minutes later, I hear this typewriter, and I thought, what is she doing? And I'm just freaking out, man. I didn't know if I should sit there or go run and hide or what. And I just sat there, and because I really didn't know what to do. And then a few minutes later, I guess it was about 20 minutes or so, maybe 30, but I'm not real good with time. But anyway, it just seemed like that. And she comes back downstairs, and she walks over to me, and she hands me this beautiful stationery. And up at the top it said birth. And I thought, well, what's this? And it looked like a poem. And so she went and sat down in her chair. And so she's just sitting there, not looking at me, just kind of staring at space. And I'm sitting on the couch reading this poem. And I want to read it to you now. Up at the top it had the name Birth. And this is what it said. I think I saw eternity. I think I heard the sound of swishing wings and currents and creatures all around. It was the beatific vision. It was light giving light from above. It was music and color and sweet scents, and it was love gazing at love. It was a defining moment, and it could have been much more. Could I again possess such riches, such a feeling deep and warm, as the night they laid my newborn in the waiting curve of my arm? Now I'm reading this on the couch, right? And my tears just came flowing, rolling down my cheeks, and I thought, wow, what a beautiful poem. And I looked at my mother, and she still wasn't looking at me at this point. And I said, Mom, what is this? It's a beautiful poem. Well, she started telling me, and this wasn't an easy conversation for her. And she said that when she gave birth to me, that she left her body, and she was engulfed in all this music and color. She said it was the most phenomenal experience and loving experience she's ever had in her whole entire life. And then when she came back into her body, these words came with her, and she remembered these words, and so she wrote them down when she was able, and she's kept this poem by the side of her bed all these years since my birth. And I'm just sitting there just listening to my mom, and this was not easy for her to talk about. And I think it wasn't anything other than it was a very overwhelming and wonderful experience, but the uncomfortableness, I think, came from not understanding what was going on and what it all meant and these sort of things. And I feel we didn't talk about it because I knew it was difficult to further the issue with anything, and I certainly didn't tell her my side of the story because I knew that'd just totally wig her out. So I left that one alone. Now she knows because she's upstairs in heaven in the big party in the sky, so she knows now. But I wasn't certainly going to tell her, in that moment. And so I'm sure she and Dad had a good conversation after I was born, because they told each other everything. They were very close to each other and very good friends and just a very happy couple. And I asked Mother, I said, well, Mom, I said, would you have told me this experience had I, not asked you? And she said, yes, I would have someday. And I said, well, why not, before now? And she says, well, I just didn't want to show any partiality among the kids because she didn't have this experience with anybody else. And I thought, well, I can understand that, because none of us, and I mean you listening to this, none of us are any better than anybody else. We are all special, and we just have our own way. So don't ever think that anybody's better than you or you're better than anybody else, because if you do, you're going to get in trouble. You're going to create some really hardship karma for yourself. So you don't want to do that. I left it at that with my mother, and that was it. That's the end of this chapter on birth. And I hope you enjoy the story. And I'll see you in chapter 2. Okay, bye-bye.